Welcome everyone to another Educators in VR Cyberbullying Month event. This is 2024. We've been doing this for a while, and I am for several years, and I'm so excited about this event that you're about to witness. My name is Laurel. I am the director of Educators in VR, and every October since 2019, Educators in VR has been celebrating is not the right word. We've been honoring cyberbullying to help keep you informed on how it works, how to protect yourself, how to defend yourself, and also really examining the perspectives behind it. And this year, with the help of Dr. Ruth Diaz and her team, we have got amazing, amazing speakers, amazing topics that are really diving in very, very deep to the hidden perspectives that we haven't covered very often, such as the perspective of the trolls and how their strategies are. And today we're even more blessed because we have staff that is representing a variety of social VR platforms that have come out from behind the curtains where they push all the buttons and pull all the levers to help keep us protected at scale. So, Dr. Ruth Diaz, it's all you.
Yay! Hello, everybody. And of course, I'm so excited to welcome these panelists. They are treasures of social VR. And so we're going to do introductions in a second. I want to invite everybody to get familiar with your emoji use in your menu system. This is a way you can give us feedback on what you're hearing and how you're noticing, and also if you have questions. And so that's a way we can communicate. So yes, I am Dr. Diaz. I am with an organization called BridgeMakers, and Llama Rocks is also a core leader with BridgeMakers over on the end there. And we're here today to talk about troll strategy. And I'm going to jump into intros with everybody in a bit here. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I learned when we got together recently. So these are all community professionals. They're going to introduce themselves in a second. But what I want us all to hold as a gathering here today is understanding and empathizing for a moment with what it's like to be a VR community professional. And excuse me, what it's like to have just a day in the life of a community professional. Understanding that what we enjoy in this immersive reality, being socializing and playing games sometimes and learning experiences, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in front of computers and sometimes in headset by these individuals to help us be safe and have an enjoyable experience. And the levels we're going to be talking about today, even though maybe we see about 10, 15 people in the room here today, the levels that these people have been dealing with as far as numbers of community that are at the same time in app, I think in VR Chat's case, it's up to 100,000 people at a given moment are in that application. And so the scale is hard to fathom. How many events have you ever heard of that had 100,000 people all at that place at the same time? And so when we talk about trolling and cyberbullying, it turns into a really different thing when we're talking about community management at scale. And so holding a lot of gratitude, hopefully, and heart emojis and compassion for these human beings and what they've been weathering, that is just unprecedented amounts of navigating and curating community experiences. And of course, early in this immersive technology, that system is going to be far from perfect, and it's going to be really clunky and probably primitive at times. But I'm so grateful to all of you for being willing to come together and talk about how to be community together around disruptive experiences. Even in the beginning of our time today, I was approached and asked, do we want to have a collider in front of our stage to kind of protect us up here? And my thing when I host these events is, yeah, let's roll with it. If we have a troll come in, we're gonna be a team. We're gonna see what we want to do there. because, you know, one of the oops,
Whoa.
we just lost our chairs. Well, speaking of disruptive moments, I guess we're all going to stand up. and so
just rolling with it.
Yeah, it's all good.
All right, the chairs
Oh.
will be back in just a second. Our apologies.
Oh, that's okay. Did Lance get kicked out and our chairs went with him? So the last thing, and actually since you're all standing, we can all look at this slide together behind you, is just, I want us to all think about, as we talk today, this is not going to be, you know, a lecture at all, but just thinking about frames of justice and understanding the layers of that in corporate systems, part of what we're actually having to be a part of is more of a punitive justice system that's more reactive based. And it isn't necessarily with the intent to punish, but it's the larger justice system that we're all in, which is in a very simplistic form, causing pain as a consequence to somebody who has caused pain as a way to try to teach and learn and cooperate together. That's a reactive approach. Reparative justice is harder because it's not just about having accountability and consequence, but actually like trying to rebuild what was broken. And then transformative justice is the longest term goal. And that is where we're actually using those pain moments that are caused by maybe one individual or group to actually reflect on how the system also was part of the failure here. And how do we transform the system as we go along so we're adapting and changing with what's coming at us. And so when we're talking about scaling communities, transformative justice is the ultimate goal, but can sometimes get lost in the mayhem of profit motives, et cetera, with companies, because, you know, when it comes down to surviving the fast-paced digital life we're all in, sometimes it's just, what are the OKRs? What are the bottom lines that we're trying to reach? And you are all in this incredible squeeze, or have been in roles of this squeeze between trying to be this empathic medium for unfathomable amounts of people that you're never going to meet in person and trying to be their voice, but also navigating a lot of people that their livelihood is based on this job they're doing within the company, and they have their kind of more technical needs and bottom lines and numbers that they want to see. So they might actually feel at times kind of slowed down by your empathy at times. And so I want us to all remember, our chairs are back, that, and for our audience also, to remember that we're all, our hearts, I think, as human beings, are all about transformative justice. But we're also mostly at a punitive justice place in corporate culture. And so with that frame in mind, we can have this conversation and hold a lot of compassion for our community management professionals they have to work in the systems that they're in. And they're working to try to bring more humanity and awareness to how do we include the most people in the most sustainable way, is if I can put words in your mouth a little bit there. Okay, good. So that being said, let's jump in with intros. So maybe starting with Llama Rocks, just a brief intro about you. And then we'll start with our first question also, which is going to be, how do you define your role as a community manager or former community manager in the context of social VR?
Okay, so introduce myself and then answer that, or just introduce myself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, I'm Molly, or Llama Rock, or Llama Rocks, sometimes Bornox. I was a community manager for Meta's Horizon Worlds for just under 2 years. I am now leading in BridgeMakers. And I am a big fan of llamas and the Golden Girls. So 2 very important things to know about me. How do I define my role as community manager in the context of social VR? So prior to joining Meta, I hadn't been in VR, hadn't really thought about it, but I had been a community manager for a long, long time. And And so when I thought back to my first days on that job there in at Horizon, I was like, how do I do this? So it's like, how do I do this anyway? What do I do best? And that's holding. I am like the ground. I am very grounding for people. And so I had to think about what that meant in such an immersive space. And I basically just, I like winged it. I went in there and I met people. I met Dr. Diaz, and among so many other people. And I was very flexible, and I had to be the student and be very curious. And so that's how I got my start. And how I was bonded with the community. And then there was the whole other side of things, which is internally, how did I work with my colleagues and show them who and what the community really was? And so I was that bridge between the two. And it's not so black and white like that. There's very many gradients in between. But at the end of the day, that is how I saw and see my role as a community manager of social VR.
Yeah, that's awesome. Andy.
Yeah, my name is Andy Fidel. I'm a virtual and social media strategist. I often partner with platforms as an independent consultant, oftentimes supporting marketing and community teams. A lot of you might know me from Altspace or over in Rec Room with the Video Partner Program. And today I'm focused on partnering with enterprise to create community-driven spaces or experiences for remote teams. My favorite emoji is the sparkle, and I'd say that's exactly my role, leading to question number one. I come from a marketing background, and yeah, community management is a key part of that role. So my goals might be a bit different from the other folks on this panel, but I would say one is to spark engagement. That's where the sparkle comes from, to contribute to the positive environment. I'm here to bridge the users with the developers, to encourage as many events as possible, helping brands and companies onboard and understand what's going on in these spaces. Really important, being a prosumer, whatever platform I'm a part of, really understanding the community and the content that's going to resonate with them, because my goal is to create new activations or to be on the lookout for new creators or communities to partner with. And in the end, to foster loyalty and trust with the platform.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. Wow. Hey, yeah, hearts to you, Andy. Thank you. Go ahead, Faye.
Okay, well, I'm Faye, and I actually come from the community of social VR. I was an enthusiast, had my own headsets, and was very active, wanted to start running events and start getting involved, and I joined the support and moderation team of AltspaceVR and was there for many, many years. And then after that, I had various roles in other companies with Rec Room and Meta. And for the last 2 years, I've been the community manager of Banter VR. And Banter VR is a social platform built by the community, again, community of Altspacers that wanted Altspace to continue living. And I am there so that for how I define my role is I'm there to encourage that community to thrive, to encourage them to be able to create amazing events and experiences with each other. And I act as like these two have said, is a bridge between the community and the developers in ways of being able to help get them what they need to succeed, get them the tools that they need to keep them protected, and to be able to give them the ability to build and to create their community. I'm also there to balance what goes between them to make sure that it still fits a business need, but that they are heard. I'm there to make sure they're heard. That's a huge part of what I'm there for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you. Tupper.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Tupper. I'm the head of community for VR Chat. Been at VR Chat for 6 years, where I also started as support and moderation kind of stuff. Back when our numbers all of a sudden over the course of two months went from 200 to 20,000. So panic hire is a good definition for me.
Wow.
But over time, I kind of grew into the community role as a community manager. I don't have the professional experience before that, but I did run a large amount of fan communities for games and for media and that kind of stuff, ranging all the way back to forums and IRC channels, and more recently like Discord servers and still forums. They're not dead, I swear. And let's see. For my background, yeah, I was a data scientist. I was doing data science for the U.S. Navy as a contractor, but so it was a little bit of a 180-degree turn is probably the best way to kind of define it. To answer your question exactly, and I think all of your the bridge is a very important commonality, and that is something that you should always be doing as a community manager. You're providing a bridge and contact point so that engineers can continue to engineer, product developers can continue to develop, and they don't have to, deal with the huge influx of information that comes in. But it's also participating and understanding and listening. I think we mentioned when we were talking before, a lot of time I personally spend is actually in spaces, just kind of taking in conversations from all angles, not even participating in them, and using that to build this subject matter expertise, sometimes on very precise subjects within platforms. And you translate that, you kind of aggregate all of that information into a position and provide that back to the team when they need it. I'd say that's an important part of it, but there's also a lot of context as well, while keeping those business, the business needs and business guidelines and your OKRs and everything in line. You have to somehow find compatibility. There always has to be, actually, let me restart that. The best thing that we can do is we can be builders that help builders build, and doing anything that can work into that concept means that we can then spread that information out, spread that effort out. So at the strategy level, that I think that's important. Tactical level, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff going on. It's never the same day over and ever.
I bet. Yeah, especially again with the numbers that you're dealing with. So the themes that I was hearing here is learner, listener, bridging, sparking. There's this catalyst funnel that you have all played a part in helping translate the needs and the language and the deadlines of sorts for all the people constructing, both inside the company and outside the company, and how that fluidity can sometimes get stuck. And then you're listening deeply to try to find the common threads to help people find flow again, and sometimes stretch in uncomfortable ways or give up visions or be disappointed. I imagine that you all deal with a variety of disappointment that mostly for the fast pace that you work in, you kind of have to keep moving through it, and you don't necessarily get to process those harder moments as much. So thank you for those answers. And yeah, we're going to move to the next question here, which is, what initial steps do you take when addressing disruptive behavior in your community? And I will just let it be popcorn style. So maybe raise your hand and I'll call on you. We lost Auntie. Andy evacuates when disruptive behaviors occur. That is our show and tell for today.
Yep.
Hopefully Andy will
There's
be
your
back.
answer.
Yeah. So who has an answer there?
Not Andy.
Not me. Okay.
Let's see.
Sure. Faye does. Okay, go Faye.
The most important thing is to really listen and figure out what is actually going on, because a lot of chaos can be happening. So actively listening, getting the whole picture of what is actually happening. If this is between longstanding members of the community and there's a disagreement or something, you know, encouraging them to work it out, but doing this away from everybody so that you can actually have a focus at the matter at hand. So bringing them to another space and just talking it out, because we're all human, and there's a lot of emotion that goes into things, and it can be a dispute between, you know, event spaces or all sorts of different things. So it's really important to get all of the information before any kind of action is taken against the account. But that would be the initial steps.
Okay, beautiful. And Andy, welcome back. If any of the educator and VR people can give Andy her legs back for us questies, that would be amazing. And yeah, Tupper, I think you had an answer on that one.
Yeah, I think mediation is effectively like the end goal for the first step, right? In a lot of these cases, they are conflicts between individual users or groups. There are a lot of tactical examples that are popping up in my head right now without going into depth on them. But I've found that the most effective method is to, you know, understanding is deeply important, because without that, you know, obviously you're going to be biased whether you like it or not. But furthermore, I think the best way to teach is by example, and I think the best way to learn by example is to do the example yourself. So mediation and guidance, in a lot of these cases, when possible, you can do that. Thankfully, those types of cases do pop up fairly often, especially in higher profile. You know, you've got two big events or something that are at each other's necks for whatever reason. And that's when these types of things really are the most effective. It can be challenging because sometimes you'll approach this initial step and you'll realize that one or both parties are completely disinterested in mediation. That is not their purpose here. Their purpose is completely different. They're not looking to resolve. So identification is also another part of it. You kind of need to classify the incident and scale it as well. That's an important bit of context.
Yeah, wow. And what's striking to me around that is that both of you are, what I'm hearing in what you're saying is almost imagining these disruptive experiences as how do we hop in and use this technology medium to have a meeting with presence if possible, so that we can hear each other's voices in addition to whatever maybe was typed at us or whatever else. Like, how do we bring our humanity there and slow it down and separate it so we can have a real conversation on this? So it's encouraging to hear that as a possibility for community managers. I know initially my experience in social VR was I didn't even know who the community manager was, and I had never seen them. It was actually a couple of years before I met very directly and personally a community manager, even though I was working as a community leader pretty early on. So it's good to know that that does happen. And I saw, Lama, you had your hand up.
Yes, and I was also scratching, so both.
Nice.
The thing that I figured out early on was that I couldn't stay frozen. When there was disruptive behavior and it would be reported, I would want to stick my head in the sand because it's a lot, you know, and there's not like clear-cut answers because every situation is different. And so the first thing I really want to focus on when something like that is happening is to respond and say at least thank you and I'm looking into it, or you know, acknowledge it, validate it, you know. And then with listening and mediating and talking and all of that comes, for me, it's interesting. Sometimes when I when I've talked to people about community, they're like, well, how do you know what people really want? And so sometimes when I look at the disruptive behavior, it's like, well, why were you being disruptive? And what is it you need? And what is it that we can actually do? And sometimes the answer is quick, and often it's not. So that's when bringing that back to internal stakeholders too is very important, and being able to decode and be that investigator, and then also, basically sell your internal stakeholders on what needs to be done or figure it out together. So there's a lot of collaboration, both externally and internally, that'll have to go on as well. But the main thing initially is to validate and say, I see you, and I want to help, and I'm going to help. But sometimes it's not fast, and it can't be reactive.
Yeah, it's really, I think there was a part of me that was wondering, like, is there a system for you to go, okay, for all of you to go, there's this conflict maybe between two leaders, or there's a conflict in the environmental space where disruptive experiences are repeatedly happening. So now I'm listening, I'm learning. Maybe it is a mediation between leaders, but maybe it is also going to another department and saying, what can we do to create more protections or more tools, or that longer term change piece of sometimes it's actually the limitations of the technology or the visibility for an event, in what Tupper brought up as a case example. So maybe some of it is they don't want to resolve that conflict because a part of them isn't saying out loud, I think this is mostly the limitations of the app, or I haven't gotten the visibility that I expected, and this is where I can pick a bone with somebody and express that frustration. And so I'm curious if there's this funneled kind of mind state for all of you around, what level of disruption or controversy is here, and how do I have a multi-pronged approach to it? Yeah, Faye, go ahead.
Yeah. I think another big thing is that as community managers, a lot of times we're dealing with the conflicts of the power users. We're dealing with the people that are the makers and the shakers of the events and the things going on. And our moderators are dealing with the conflicts that are, of the people that are coming in and being disruptive, and trolls and things like that. So I think that would be that funnel that you're speaking of, is there's definitely different kind of policies that we go through, whereas our moderators will advise them of the community standards, show them where to go to get to that information, and let them know that their behavior is being watched, and you need to tone it down, that kind of thing. But yeah, as community managers, I think that we're more in a mediating role, like Tupper was saying, mediation, and trying to foster those relationships between those people.
Yeah, thank you. In a similar but related or adjacent question that I'd like to, if possible, start with Andy on, because Andy, you blinked out there for a moment, is when we really get down to the nonverbals, to the like on the ground moment. Here you have a conflict, a disruptor happening. Here a troll has arrived. What are your strategies for de-escalating that emotional affect and volatility?
Great, and I'm just going to give a small note from the previous question to lead in, because I think it really relates. But one thing I wanted to add was the notion of setting the community up for success. So not just deal with the issues and problems that we have at hand, but how can we set them up so they don't happen as strongly, or we're ready for it, right? And so I feel like bringing sometimes an abundant mindset versus scarcity, getting a lot of different leaders to collaborate, to partner up and pull each other up, onwards and upwards and onwards. And that's something that we've worked real hard to do in places like Rec Room with the video partner program, and just making sure that we have these strong community pillars, but they also have each other, right? Because we can't always be dependent on for everything. And so having these communities be their best advocates goes a real long way. In terms of de-escalating, I mean, we talked about this word, but empathy is a really big one. Compassion, just the fact, like you were saying, Molly, I'm listening, I'm hearing you, and that goes a real long way, especially now with everything being much more automized, and we have all these like standard emails and you know, AI not coming into the lot, and there's nothing more frustrating when things are going wrong or blocked or you know. I just experienced this with my own hacking of LinkedIn profile, and I just wanted a human to tell me that they see me and they know about my situation, and just that de-escalates a lot. A bit of humor. Sometimes I feel like, you know, taking myself too seriously. If things happen, I know how to just diffuse the energy and not really let it, you know, attach on me. Setting clear boundaries has been a real big one. I am not the platform. I am collaborating with it, but I am not sometimes I would say like the object of your frustration and your hate. If anything, I'm a human on the other side of that computer, and my role is to do my best and to service you my best. Authentic, a lot of times my approach has been the human card. These aren't my decisions, this is the business roadmap, but as a marketer, my goal is to align with those business values. If not, then I have to leave. but my role as a social media marketer working in communications is to really live and embody those values, so they have to match up. And just being compassionate about things that might change or things that might evolve, because a lot of people, you know, like social media platforms, even more so now with social VR, a lot of people's livelihoods depend on it, their business depends on it. All of it is really contained in this one place. And so, again, being a human, I think that's my default.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely answer. Yeah, and for any additional answers that might be here, if possible, I want us to even hone deeper into your mainstream trolling disruptor, because I know that all of you have been on the ground and seen this firsthand, if not had it come at you. What do you do in the moment also to like just see somebody in such a dysregulated state, in a amplified, angry state? How do you work with that on the ground?
Yeah, this is something I run into on a fairly regular basis. I make it a habit, of course, to hop through the same public spaces that a lot of people do on the VR chat platform. And it is no secret that, you know, it's the internet. It's Wild West. It is full of disruptors. Also full of, you know, saying full is actually a little bit overblowing the problem. We mentioned this when we chatted before, but my mindset has always been that for every one disruptor, there are 99, you know, other people that are there doing good things, whether it is just being friends. So. Or building something, or just existing in a good space. So it's important to keep that in your mind the entire time you're following through this process. But it's a pretty rapid iteration process, I would say, mentally, when you encounter something like that, right? Like you have to perform, you know, the kind of understanding of why they're being disruptive, as you mentioned, Faye, and then also a very rapid assessment of like, what techniques do I have available here? Is this something that even is feasible with mediation? You know, what level is their frustration or anger at? Are they simply here for a reaction? In which case, like, no matter what you do, then, you know, that is going to be the goal there. So that happens fairly rapidly. I can usually get a decent handle on someone with about 10, 15 seconds of interaction, I think is a good place of going. And I think that's just a human skill, right? Like, I think most people have that. It's just really understanding how you're doing that mentally and turning it into a process that you're aware of and kind of breathe along with. From there, I think it's highly dependent, right? Like if it's one of these higher, what's the word for this? Higher kind of level disruptors, as in someone who actually has a reason, someone who like has legitimate reason to be angry or frustrated, then there's a conversation there. You can understand it and As Andy said, like try and humanize yourself and keep yourself separated from the platform at large, which can be a challenge, especially when you're acting as a face or the point of contact for a company. And you can proceed from there with just a normal, kind of de-escalation techniques and conversation. I've gotten a lot of good results out of that. Personally speaking, though, about, I don't know, let's say conservatively 80% of the time, it is usually a person looking for a reaction, especially in, again, the wide, broad internet. And that can be tougher because there's no mediation, there's no remediation in a lot of those cases. The person they are on a collision course, essentially. Whether they get a reaction or not, like they're doing what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to separate that is hard.
It's also an interesting parallel, Andy, when you were defining your role is to spark, right? And some might say that somebody who's trying to provoke a reaction, their role also might be considered to spark. There's some fascinating parallels here. The other one that I'm thinking about is in our earlier conversation a couple days ago with all of us, the idea that when one of the things I've learned out of the troll study and this discovery interview process I've been doing with trolls while they're trolling is that they have a zero-sum game mindset of if I block you, I lose the game, and if you block me, I win the game. And Tupper, you brought up that that's the end goal, but on my way to having you block me, I might be toying with you and actually creating some kind of reaction process and watching you get riled up, etc. And so I see some interesting parallels there in what we all kind of realized, which is for when you're in these social VR apps as a community professional, it is a much more difficult concept for you to personally be blocking anybody because you don't want to lose that visibility of them. So whatever their reaction and amplified responding is, you're kind of holding that we're in the ring together and hopefully we're both going to land. I don't want to lose sight of your complaints here because that could just blow up much bigger somewhere else. And so you both have a similar piece of like, I will lose if I block you, as maybe the trolling mindset, but with very different goals or outcomes. And I'm just struck by some of those parallels. I'm curious, Faye or Lama, if you have any comments on that.
I will say that I've never blocked anyone ever in my whole career anywhere that I can think of. But one of the things that would happen to me when I would especially go into public spaces and is that I always turn my volume all the way down because then I'm able to, I can deal with certain things, but I cannot deal with the shrieking. All right, it's hard, and that paralyzes me. And so that's my, I guess, method of not blocking someone, but tuning them out and able to try to get through. If that makes sense.
So real and so human to just recognize that there are other ways before blocking to minimize the harm that's happening to you as a human being. Yeah, thank you. Faye, did you have something there?
I sometimes would appeal to the person coming in that, do you really want to lose access to this? That there is a great way to be able to connect with a lot of people, and it will be swift if you do go past this warning. So just realize that it's not hurting us. We will just be removing you. But if you would like to enjoy being here with all of these people and have access to all these things, I encourage you to stay. It's a pretty cool place. And that's something I would say a lot in Altspace in the past.
And what you're actually pointing out is it might be like, I'm going to mute or I'm going to turn the volume down on this person, but if I continue to see the body language of them running around and disrupting happening, then I'm going to have that conversation with them. And I'm going to move from maybe muting them to banning them out of the event or even potentially the app, depending on the history there. And so even though you're not blocking them personally, at times you still have to take that those steps to protect the bigger community. And you're really trying to appeal to that human being of being like, hey, this is Disneyland for digital immersion. Like, do you really want to get kicked out of the park? And there's a lot of great rides here. And so people get to like feel that almost Willy Wonka moment of here's somebody with some power and integrity and not being reactive to me is really inviting me to genuinely enjoy this space. And that can really have a powerful effect of I was welcomed instead of pushed out. I was given a bridge. Yeah, lovely. Yep. Wow. So many good answers here. And I'm also feeling like this could be a 2-hour panel, but we have other questions to get through. Okay, so next one. In your experience, where do current technologies fall short in supporting community management?
Yeah, I will gladly start with this one.
Jump in, Tupper.
So there's a lot of promise in a lot of newer technology. I'm gonna start with the buzzword of the last I'd say 18 to 24 months, which is AI. And for the record, like I am very interested in AI. I've got pretty deep technical understanding of like how these models work, that kind of stuff. And there's definitely technology out there that permits you to use it, especially in spaces like these where it's all voice chat, right? Like we're all familiar with, for example, ridiculously powerful or overbearing, I would say, text kind of filters. For an excellent example, go to Roblox and try to type a normal sentence. It will turn halfway into stars. And that's one problem that AI kind of solves or attempts to solve, because it can understand context, and given the proper instructions, you can grok stuff out of that. I think the limitation that we're really running into is at this point in the technology, we're still on that peak of everybody's trying to solve the problem, whatever problem with the technology. We're falling down it now. But there is this drive to say, oh, well, we can just shove this through an LLM. We can just shove this through a voice, whisper or a voice recognition model, whatever. But then you run into other problems such as cultural issues, language issues, which are getting better, context, which is getting better, but not quite there yet. And most importantly, cost. With the amount of voice traffic that gets on platforms like this, running those types of services, with the current technology and the hardware that we have is ridiculously prohibitive. We're talking like half or more of a operating budget of a platform of this size. Your infrastructure budget doubles if you're lucky. TPUs and other technology like that, purpose-built hardware for these things will solve that hopefully within the next 5 years. But like fusion, it is probably eternally 5 years away kind of deal. So that's the most promising one. There's a lot of other tools out there that are interesting, but it's also we've all crawled through the pack of software out there trying to find some magic solution, and like you get a bunch of salespeople and they're doing their job obviously, but everyone says their tool can solve everything and it doesn't. It's always like you got to piecemeal stuff together. It's yeah. This is something that's particularly frustrated me for quite a while, but once it's actually out there and we have that tech, and we figure out the privacy concerns as well, that's a big one. You got a computer listening to you all the time. I think we'll be in a good place, but there are challenges.
Yeah, thank you for that. Who else here? Technology.
I was just going to agree with Tupper that it's that the challenges are there because what is said, just a distance away from me, I may not hear. There's no way I can moderate against that. I mean, we have, community reports and things like that, but if you miss it, you miss it. That's why I love to have AI become a much bigger thing to be able to get to the things that you miss.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, just the perception that our brains are believing that we're in a physical reality space where we could pick up on distant conversations, or we might be more sensitive to recognizing a full human body, physical reality, body language tension going on in a small group from a distance. But in here, we don't have all of that fluidity and that even just the technology being tunnel vision, that we don't have that peripheral vision, which is putting our physiology into a certain state of mind of like, go faster, run, react. And so that kind of peripheral awareness of feeling all the different body languages and dynamics in an event, much less for all of you who are probably most of the time not in the events. You're more, at that higher level of strategy. And so you're missing that on the ground feeling that maybe some people are feeling robbed of if there's a disruptor in the room that you're not necessarily seeing. But then there's the pragmatics of like, how does this data get crunched and how does AI factor into this in a way that is net positive versus big brother spying, and how does that transparency work while protecting privacy of those involved? And it's just it's messy, and it feels like a perpetual wicked problem of sorts of like, we love the technology because it's giving us access to each other globally for the first time in humanity in a very presence-based way, but there's so much about the like actual details of how that works fluidly and how it glitches and causes real harm that as a community management role that each of you have played in different ways, it's definitely outside your scope of what you're supposed to be like really thinking hard about, but it still is affecting you constantly. And so you're having to still like pay attention to those more specific data points, I guess, on how the technology is evolving, when it could be expected to be helpful. Is it adding more problems than actually helping in the beginning when it's implemented? There's so many layers to that you're all having to cope with. So I'm just feeling a lot of empathy for that. And Lama, I saw you raise your hand for a moment.
It was a raise. The only piece that I can really speak to with technology was when I would have to do sentiment reporting. And when I was doing it before there were sentiment tools, I was literally going through the community forums. This was before Meta, a different job, and doing like my own sentiment reports, and then which was quite a task. And then having sentiment tools in the beginning was just, I mean, it's subjective, right? And it's not picking up on those siloed conversations, those DMs, conversations that aren't on the platform that is, that it's monitoring. So I remember when there was a time I would go through the Meta Horizon official Facebook group every week and read every single comment and make my own report based on that. And I think, and that's where I learned a lot of things too. Like there's things that the tools don't pick up on that are codes for other things, right? They don't pick up on like dog whistling or just ways people talk, and so that could be a really big miss. And I don't know if the technology has gotten better in the last year, but it seems like it would be kind of hard to pick up on that.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I know those sentiment reports from a community leader end of things. When I was at Meta and seeing this, I always felt like that doesn't capture what's actually happening. It's sorting people into, is it a positive, is it a negative, is it a neutral? And there's so much more going on. And Andy, I see your hand. I'm going to ask you to also jump into our last question here because I'm realizing sadly that we're coming close to the end of our time here. So I'm going to skip past one of those and come to the last one. So you'll probably comment on both of these. The last question is going to be, what are your hopes for the future of community management in social VR? And yeah, go ahead, Andy. I'll have you go first.
Yeah, and it ties in. I just wanted to like give, I don't think the word reminder is the right word, but just a note that community hosts and orgs are essential to building any social VR platform. And so they have the priority in making sure they have the right tools to protect themselves. By respect to other people, it's kind of their responsibility to make sure that they're hosting a safe space. And the show must go on, right? If there's a troll, we have to move on. You can take the decision later if it's worth the ban, but making sure that our tools are at their highest point. So catching the trolls, freezing, muting, kicking, just making sure we can do this in a very effective manner. And in all, that's definitely a top priority when I pick a platform and I choose to host an event. And so in terms of like the future hopes for community management, number one, better tools, and bettering tools, not saying that they're not great, but making sure that they keep up with the tendencies and the types of trolling that we have, right? Like I'll give you an example. The type of trolling that we might have is people going underground and trolling us, and I can't see them, so I can't catch them. So like just keeping in mind, as people get creative, as we usually very much are, our tools have to get creative as well. Greater transparency and conversation between platforms and communities and their needs to make sure that the right things are in the roadmap. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go back to the human factor. AI is great. It's an automation tool. It's fabulous. But at the end of the day, trolling and issues and problems, they're all essentially human issues and problems. And so we can't have always technology figuring them out for ourselves. So as platforms grow, I really hope that platforms continue to grow their teams as well.
Yeah, thank you. So good. I feel like that kind of rounds it up, and I'm sure there's other answers here. So 30-second answers for Llama and Tupper. What is your hope for community management? Yeah, go ahead.
Just that we are continually figuring this out. We're talking about community management in the VR space, the social VR space, and we are figuring this out. There are not very many years behind us in this space, so we're seeing how it is developing, and we're part of it. And I just hope that it just continues to evolve with the idea of AI, with the idea of understanding the troll and having better tools, like Andy was saying. As things change, more things are developed. I mean, eventually in Altspace, we had a little thing to help us with the ground trolls that we could see voice indicators of who was speaking, and so we would be able to find out if there was always a microphone that was on, and we could take care of that. But we didn't have that at the beginning. So that's an example of it changing and developing as the trolls develop, because they are they're always
also.
continually changing too. Yes, evolving. That's what I was going for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Llama. Yeah.
Simply put, I just really want my wish is to see us, all of us here, all of you, working together collaboratively to keep bringing people over that bridge and meeting them on that bridge and bringing them like over that bridge together. And whether it's with tools or AI or whatever it is, like that we all just keep working together. And that's the thing I really like about what I'm doing at BridgeMakers, is that like, we're really growing and like leaning through conflict and being resilient and not stopping, and teaching others how to do that and what that means and what that looks like. And that could look differently and be differently to everybody, but just to keep going and keep walking through that bridge.
Lovely.
I will gladly yes and all of that. I will note that I am stuck on the concept of a ground troll. That's amazing. But I think my thing I want the most, aside from everything else that has been said and is correct, is a focus on community empowerment. As any platform scales, not just mine, as any platform scales, you reach a point in which you can only hire so many people, you can only bring so many people on the team, and there needs to be a trust constructed between organizations and businesses and the communities that populate them, so that power can be spread, essentially. And that can be scary, right? Like handing out moderation powers to a person who's not on a payroll, like that's scary. That's scary as heck.
Yes.
But there's no better way to scale. We all know people in our communities who you would zero question just be like, yeah, sure, you can ban people, I don't, whatever. Like there's, as long as we can continue building that, and then also enable those builders to build their own communities with the mindsets that we transmit to them, they can then retransmit it, because it is more about example. People act how they see other people acting. If you have a space where everybody is screeching or where everybody is being a troll, then they are going to play into that. So instead, if you join a space where everyone's just kind of hanging out and chilling out or doing whatever, but being nice to each other the entire way through and not being a troll, not being disruptive, then they're going to do the same thing.
So many good answers. I have all those hopes. And I think to come back to Andy's, I hope that community management and social VR continues to be human. And whether AI gets great at helping us or not, that there will always be human beings behind the scenes. So I had one last question about trolls and under bridges, but I also know we're at time. So I want to see if there's any last questions in our audience here. I know Kristen last night had a great one, but I'm not sure Kristen made it today. So are there any questions for our esteemed
Sarah's here. Sarah's
here.
a question.
Sarah, do you have a question?
Let's make sure that we can get everybody unmuted. Hang on a second. Goodness. We have another event going over on right now, so I'm looking for the unmute. There it is. Okay. There you go. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Laurel. Thank you so much for this event. I appreciate you all. Just a really quick question. I moderate a very low scale event, and I'm Buddhist. Okay, so I just want to speak to, and I'm sorry I can't see your name from where I'm standing, the gentleman on the stage. There's some really big secondary diversity dimensions going on for me, from my perspective. Something that I do, because I teach Vipassana and I teach body scanning in VR. This happened last night, actually, is that someone came in and was getting up all around my avatar. I can't do VR. I get very sick in VR. But, that is a part of the Vipassana practice in Buddhism, is just kind of letting them be there and then turning them into a point of meditation. I'm not trying to alienate them, but I do need to invite them into the meditation because we are meditating. So I'm just wondering, just what your thoughts are on that approach. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the exact context of the process itself, but I can still grok it from your explanation. I think when someone's disrupting a pre-built space like that, it's interesting, and I commend you for your first response being wanting to bring them into the process. That is very commendable. I think someone who's running a session like that, I'd probably reach for the kick button, but that's kind of a knee jerk. That being said, I think it's kind of a, using actually your example, Faye, isolating and understanding is probably the first approach I would take. It may be disruptive, but less disruptive than what they were currently doing, to step away for a moment and bring them with you and figure out what they're there for. And you can usually get a pretty good understanding of what they're there for within a couple of 30 seconds of conversation. And either say, you can join us, so you can, follow this process, or if they're just there to cause problems, you have hopefully other solutions to solve that problem. Yeah.
Good, I did good. Thank you. That's what I did. Thanks.
There you go.
Excellent.
You're ahead
All
of me.
right. We have time for a few more questions. Quick questions.
Yeah. And if nobody
Just
jumps at
unmute
this,
and shout.
I was wondering.
Okay. Yes,
Steph.
Wondering whether, are you looking forward to the current political problems and worldwide problems to subside a little bit? Have you found that this is going to has it grown since all of this has been happening in terms of trolling in your spaces? Or, yeah, and do you look forward to it going down again once some of these things have been resolved?
That's a great question.
I don't know about y'all, but
yeah.
yeah, any election period, it always spikes. Yeah, shoots through the roof. In fact, we got from our contact at Meta in particular. We were told, have you guys seen this massive increase in trolling with the election cycle? And I mean, I have my own theories, but looking forward to it being over, certainly. I think that's no matter what job I was working, I'd be looking forward to the end of it.
For many reasons,
Still work crisis lines, and we would see this escalation in distress and conflict for sure around elections. So yeah, and it was actually during the last Trump election. So
yeah, and it's part of the cycle, right? There's all kinds of cycles with whenever there's aggression within a community, or even during the lockdown. I'm sure that that was incredible because of the flood of people that came in, and so plus it's seasonal. All right, anyone else?
One more question.
Questions?
If not, I will steal it. Okay, cool.
Atessa, did you have a question?
Yay.
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to ask my last one. So this is the last question that is asked in the troll study, which is for all trolls and anybody who is interviewed. If a troll lives under a bridge, what is on the other side of the bridge? And I gave you all the heads up on this, so hopefully you found an answer. So starting with Lamarax.
It's all the people that we have all brought over to the other side of the bridge, people and creatures.
Oh, that's lovely. Andy.
The future community you're going to join or you're going to create.
That's interesting. Okay. Hey.
A vibrant community that's happy and healthy, and they've been able to minimize what the trolls are doing by having that bridge that crosses it.
Okay. Interesting. Yay. Tupper.
I think the answer I came up with is where you're going. What else is a bridge for? But I like these answers better.
Lovely. Lovely.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Closing words, Ruth?
Yeah. I mean, I have had the dream of this event because I wanted to build a space of community for those who are holding community for everybody else, and give you all a stage to present your humanness here and give a face of the human beings behind that are not necessarily trying to represent these applications, but inadvertently can get very targeted and also heroized, sometimes to an objectifying level by the communities you're serving. So I want to just invite everybody here with heart emojis, etc., to give you all gratitude for what you're doing. It is a kind of impossible job, and the fact that you have done this for years, it's such a privilege to be here with all four of you. Thank you for your service and being a bridge. In some respects, you are the bridge. So very grateful for your wisdom here today. Yeah. So heart emoji.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And as one
thank
of
you.
the many here who have been protected, defended by you all, thank you for that. That heart of service is just beautiful. Thank you. All right. So in summary, I want to thank Dr. Ruth Diaz and her amazing, amazing team with Tupper and Faye and Andy Fidel and Llama Rocks. Thank you so much for being here. This is another of Educators in VR's annual Cyberbullying Month events. We have more planned for October, and you can watch this video and many of the other ones from our different events on our Educators in VR YouTube channel. So thank you all.
Woo. Awesome. Yay. So for those of you who want to stick around, I'm going to be here for probably another 15 minutes, and I'm not sure if everybody else has to run off. But either way, we can kind of mingle and go off global and just chat and see if there's other questions in the audience. Yay.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
We're going to adjust the audio so that people aren't talking over the top of each other. And thank you all for being here. Know that we have more events coming up later today, including the Watch Stack, where we're going to be having an amazing discussion based on a TED Talk done by Ashley Judd, who's one of the founders of and important people in the Me Too movement. We're going to be talking about how we need to change the laws in hate speech to really target and hold the harassers accountable. You know, we have more laws for, you know, defamation and libel than we do for harassment, and I think that needs to change. So we're going to be talking about that today. Our Educators VR XR News is immediately after that, followed by our new XR Launchpad, From Idea to Business. It's an introduction to our paid course on taking your business idea, whatever it is, in the XR industry, in the XR world, and turning that into a business. So
Yay.
come join us.